What happens when a small-town cop arrests someone who could end his entire career with one phone call? He thought he was dealing with just another suspicious outsider. He was wrong, dead wrong, and when the truth came out, his face went from confident to terrified in seconds. This is a story you need to hear. The sun was beginning its descent over the small Georgia town of Millbrook, casting long golden shadows across Main Street. Population, 8,000. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where strangers stuck out like neon signs, and where the biggest crime was usually teenagers spray painting the water tower. Special Agent Rochelle Carter had no intention of stopping in Millbrook. She was supposed to drive straight through on her way to Atlanta, but then her phone rang, the call that changed everything. "Rochelle, it's your mother." Her aunt's voice was shaking. "She collapsed at church. They're taking her to Millbrook Regional. You need to come now." Rochelle's hands tightened on the steering wheel of her rental car. Her mother. The woman who'd raised her alone, who'd worked 3 jobs to put her through college, who'd cried with pride when Rochelle graduated from the FBI Academy 18 years ago. "I'm coming," Rochelle said, her voice steady despite the panic rising in her chest. "Tell her I'm coming." She'd been in Charlotte for a counterterrorism briefing when she got the call. Millbrook was 2 hours away, but Rochelle made it in 90 minutes, her rental car eating up the highway miles. She didn't know this town well, had only visited once when her mother first moved here to be near family. But right now, all that mattered was getting to that hospital. She pulled off the highway into Millbrook at 5:15 p.m. The town looked exactly as she remembered. Sleepy, quaint, frozen in time. A main street with a diner, a hardware store, a church, American flags hanging from every lamppost, pickup trucks parked diagonally along the curb. And then she realized she had no idea where the hospital was. Rochelle spotted a gas station up ahead, Miller's Gas and Go, the sign read in faded letters, and pulled in. She'd ask for directions, get back on the road, be at her mother's bedside in 5 minutes. She parked near the entrance, stepped out of the car, and was halfway to the door when she noticed him. A police officer leaning against his patrol car across the parking lot, watching her. Rochelle had been a federal agent long enough to recognize that look. It wasn't casual observation, it was assessment, suspicion, the kind of look that said, "You don't belong here." She ignored it and walked into the gas station. Inside, an elderly white man stood behind the counter reading a newspaper. "Excuse me," Rochelle said, her voice calm and polite. "Can you tell me how to get to Millbrook Regional Hospital?" The man looked up, studied her for a moment, then pointed. "Go back out to Main, take a left, follow it about 2 miles. You'll see it on your right. Big building, can't miss it." "Thank you," Rochelle said, and headed back outside. The police officer was no longer leaning against his car. He was standing next to her rental vehicle, hand resting on his belt, examining her out-of-state plates. Officer Jake Mitchell was 28 years old and had been on the Millbrook Police Department for 4 years. In that time, he'd written 847 traffic tickets, made 23 arrests, mostly DUIs and domestic disturbances, and had developed what he considered a 6th sense for trouble. And this car, this late-model sedan with North Carolina plates, tinted windows, driven by a black woman he'd never seen before. This was trouble. He could feel it. "Afternoon, ma'am," Mitchell said as Rochelle approached. His tone was friendly enough, but his body language wasn't. He'd positioned himself between Rochelle and her driver's side door. "Good afternoon, officer," Rochelle replied evenly. She'd dealt with cops like this before, young, eager to prove themselves, seeing threats that weren't there. "This your vehicle?" Mitchell asked. "It's a rental." "I'm just passing through." "Uh-huh." Mitchell's eyes scanned her up and down. Rochelle was dressed in dark jeans, a black blazer and a white blouse, professional but casual. "Passing through to where?" "The hospital," Rochelle said. "My mother's there." "Now, if you'll excuse me." She moved toward her car door, but Mitchell stepped slightly to the side, still blocking her path. "I'm going to need to see some ID," he said. Rochelle felt a familiar frustration rising, but kept her voice calm. "Officer, I haven't committed any traffic violation." "I'm not obligated to show you ID." Mitchell's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I'm conducting an investigation. I need to see your identification." An investigation of what? Rochelle asked. What crime do you suspect me of committing? Suspicious activity. Standing in a gas station parking lot. Being evasive with a police officer. Rochelle took a slow breath. She didn't have time for this. Her mother was in a hospital bed, possibly fighting for her life, and this small-town cop was on a power trip. Fine, she said, reaching into her blazer. Mitchell's hand immediately moved to his weapon. Slowly, Rochelle froze, her hand inside her jacket. I'm reaching for my credentials, officer. My FBI credentials. The skepticism on Mitchell's face was immediate. You're what? I'm a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Rochelle said calmly. I'm going to slowly remove my credentials wallet from my inside jacket pocket. Okay? Mitchell's hand stayed on his weapon. Go ahead. Slowly. Rochelle carefully pulled out her credentials wallet and flipped it open. Her FBI badge gleamed in the late afternoon sun next to her official identification card with her photo, name, and title, Special Agent Rochelle Carter. She held it up for Mitchell to see. He barely glanced at it. That's fake, he said flatly. Rochelle blinked. Excuse me? I said it's fake. You can buy those online for $20. Officer, I can assure you, ma'am, I'm going to need you to step away from the vehicle and place your hands on the hood. Rochelle's patience was reaching its limit. Officer, I'm a federal agent. I'm showing you valid credentials. I have not committed any crime, and I am on my way to a family emergency. I don't have time for this. Then you shouldn't have tried to impersonate a federal officer, Mitchell said, his confidence growing. That's a felony, ma'am. Hands on the hood, now. I'm not impersonating anyone, Rochelle said, her voice steel now. I am a federal officer. Call your supervisor. Call the FBI field office in Atlanta. But do not waste any more of my time with this nonsense. Mitchell keyed his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 7. I need backup at Miller's Gas and Go. Suspect is claiming to be FBI attempting to flee. I'm not attempting to flee, Rochelle said, her voice rising for the first time. I'm standing right here. Hands on the hood, Mitchell barked. Last warning. Rochelle knew what was happening. She'd seen it too many times in her career. A black person asserting their rights. A white cop feeling challenged. The situation spiraling because of ego and assumptions. But knowing it didn't make it less infuriating. Officer Mitchell, she said, reading his name tag, you are making a serious mistake. The only mistake here is yours, ma'am. Hands on the hood. Rochelle made a split-second decision. She could fight this, physically resist, make a scene, potentially make everything worse, or she could comply, let this play out, and deal with the consequences later. She placed her hands on the hood of the car. Mitchell's backup arrived 3 minutes later, Sergeant Tom Rodriguez, a 15-year veteran who'd seen his share of situations go sideways. He pulled up, assessed the scene, and immediately felt his stomach drop. Something about this didn't sit right. What have we got, Mitchell? Rodriguez asked, stepping out of his patrol car. Subject claiming to be FBI Rochelle, Mitchell said, standing behind Rochelle with one hand still on his weapon. Tried to show me fake credentials. Refused to comply with lawful orders. Rodriguez walked over to Rochelle's rental car and looked inside. Clean. No visible contraband. No signs of criminal activity. He glanced at the woman. Professional clothing, calm demeanor despite being detained, no visible signs of intoxication or distress. Ma'am, Rodriguez said, his tone more measured than Mitchell's had been. Can you tell me what's going on here? Rochelle turned her head slightly to look at him. When she spoke, her voice was controlled but carried an edge of barely contained frustration. Sergeant Rodriguez, she said, reading his name tag. My name is Special Agent Rochelle Carter with the FBI. My credentials wallet is currently in your officer's possession. My mother collapsed and was taken to Millbrook Regional Hospital. I stopped here to ask for directions, and Officer Mitchell decided I was a suspicious person. I have committed no crime. I have shown valid federal identification. And I have been detained for no legitimate reason while my mother is in the hospital, possibly dying. Every word was deliberate. Every word was a warning. Rodriguez picked up on it immediately. He walked over to Mitchell. Let me see those credentials. Mitchell handed over the wallet reluctantly. Rodriguez examined it carefully. The badge, the ID card, the hologram security features. He'd never seen FBI credentials up close before, but these looked legitimate, very legitimate. "Mitchell," Rodriguez said quietly, "this looks real." "Sarge, you can buy those online." "No, you can't," Rodriguez interrupted. "Not like this. These have security features, holograms. This is government issued." He looked at Mitchell seriously. "Did you verify this with anyone? Did you call it in?" Mitchell's confidence wavered. She was being evasive. "Did you call the FBI field office? Did you run her name through any database?" "She's lying, Sarge. I know it." Rodriguez felt his blood pressure rising. "On what basis? What probable cause do you have for this detention?" Mitchell caught himself before he said what he was thinking, but they both knew what the next word was going to be. Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "She's what, Mitchell?" Mitchell said nothing. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said, walking over to Rochelle, "I apologize for this situation. We're going to sort this out right now. Can I have your permission to call the FBI field office in Atlanta to verify your identity?" "You don't need my permission," Rochelle said. "You need to do your job. The number is on the card. Ask for Special Agent in Charge Morrison. Tell him you're holding Special Agent Rochelle Carter, and then prepare for the conversation of your life." Rodriguez pulled out his phone, but before he could dial, Mitchell spoke up. "Sarge, we can't just take her word for it. What if she's part of something bigger? What if this is a setup?" "A setup for what?" Rodriguez snapped. "She stopped at a gas station to ask for directions. We don't know what she was doing in there. Maybe she was casing the place. Maybe you need to think very carefully about what you're saying right now," Rodriguez interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "Because if this woman is who she says she is, and you've detained a federal agent without cause, we're not just talking about a lawsuit, we're talking about a federal investigation into this department." Mitchell's face went pale, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "Then let's take her to the station and sort it out there." "Mitchell, Sergeant, I'm making an arrest for impersonating a federal officer and obstruction." Rodriguez couldn't believe what he was hearing. "On what evidence?" "On my judgment as a sworn officer." Rochelle had heard enough. She turned to face them both, her hands still on the hood of her car. "Sergeant Rodriguez," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife, "I strongly advise you to stop this right now. You seem like a reasonable man. You seem like someone who understands the gravity of what's happening. Your officer has made a mistake, a serious one, but it can still be fixed. Let me go. Let me get to the hospital, and we'll forget this ever happened. It was a lifeline, an escape hatch, and Rodriguez knew it." But Mitchell was already pulling out his handcuffs. "Turn around, ma'am. Hands behind your back." "Mitchell, stand down," Rodriguez ordered. "She's under arrest, Sarge. She's coming with me. On whose authority? Mine." Rodriguez watched in horror as Mitchell approached Rochelle with the handcuffs. This was career suicide, not just for Mitchell, but potentially for all of them. "Officer Mitchell," Rochelle said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system, "if you put those handcuffs on me, you will regret it for the rest of your life. I'm giving you one last chance to walk away." "You're in no position to threaten me," Mitchell said, grabbing her wrist. The handcuff clicked into place, then the other one. Rochelle stood there, handcuffed, a federal agent detained by a small-town cop with an ego bigger than his badge. "You have no idea what you just did," she said quietly. Mitchell turned to Rodriguez. "I'll transport her to the station." "You coming?" Rodriguez didn't move. He just stood there, knowing he'd just witnessed the end of someone's career. He just hoped it wasn't his. The Millbrook Police Department was a small brick building on the edge of town, next to the fire station. It had 4 holding cells, a bullpen with 6 desks, and a chief's office that smelled like burnt coffee and old cigars. Mitchell walked Rochelle through the door like he'd just caught the town's most dangerous criminal. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man named Carlson, looked up from his computer. "What you got, Mitchell?" "Federal impersonation, obstruction." She was being combative at Miller's Gas and Go. Carlson looked at Rochelle, professional attire, calm demeanor, handcuffed, and raised an eyebrow. "She don't look combative." Looks can be deceiving, Mitchell said, leading Rochelle toward the holding cells. I need to make a phone call, Rochelle said. You'll get your phone call, Mitchell replied. Not a phone call I'm requesting, Rochelle said. A phone call I'm entitled to as a federal agent being unlawfully detained. Ma'am, you're not a federal agent. You're a suspect in custody. Then prove it, Rochelle said, stopping in the hallway and turning to face him. Call the FBI right now. Verify my identity. If I'm lying, I go in the cell and face charges. If I'm not, you let me go and we all pretend this never happened. Those are your two options. Mitchell hesitated. Not because he was doubting himself, his ego wouldn't allow that, but because something about her absolute certainty was beginning to crack through his confidence. Get in the cell, he said, opening the barred door. We'll sort this out. Rochelle stepped inside, and the door clanged shut behind her. She stood there for a moment, taking in her surroundings. Concrete walls, metal bench, a toilet in the corner. She'd been in worse places during her FBI career. Undercover operations, hostage situations, raid entries, but those had all been by choice, part of the job. This was different. This was humiliation. This was being treated like a criminal because a cop saw a black woman and assumed the worst. She sat down on the bench and closed her eyes, thinking about her mother in the hospital, probably wondering where she was, thinking about the phone call she'd make in a few minutes that would turn this entire situation upside down, thinking about how Officer Jake Mitchell's life was about to change forever. 20 minutes later, the phone on Carlson's desk rang. Millbrook PD, he answered. The voice on the other end was calm, but carried unmistakable authority. This is Special Agent Marcus Webb with the FBI Atlanta Field Office. I'm trying to locate Special Agent Rochelle Carter. Her phone is off, and her last known GPS location puts her in Millbrook. Have you had any contact with a woman matching that description? Carlson's face went white. He looked over at the holding cells, then at Mitchell, who was typing up his arrest report. Hold on a second. He covered the receiver and hissed at Mitchell. FBI's on the phone asking about a Rochelle Carter. Mitchell looked up. What? FBI, Atlanta office, looking for someone named Rochelle Carter. The color drained from Mitchell's face. Carlson uncovered the receiver. Sir, we have someone in custody by that name. There was a pause. Then, you have Special Agent Carter in custody? On what charges? Federal impersonation, and you arrested a federal agent for impersonating a federal agent. It wasn't a question. It was a statement dripping with disbelief and barely contained anger. We didn't know she was. Is her mother Martha Carter? Carlson looked at Mitchell, who scrambled through Rochelle's belongings on his desk and found her phone. He unlocked it, no password in emergency mode, and saw missed calls from Mom's hospital and text messages from someone named Aunt Joyce. She mentioned her mother was in the hospital, Carlson admitted. Martha Carter had a stroke 3 hours ago, the agent said, his voice hard now. She's at Millbrook Regional. Rochelle was driving from Charlotte to see her. And you arrested her. Carlson felt his stomach drop through the floor. Put whoever's in charge on the phone. Now. Chief Green isn't, then get him. And tell him if Special Agent Carter isn't released in the next 5 minutes and at her mother's bedside in 10, the entire weight of the Federal Bureau of Investigation is going to come down on that department like a hammer. Am I clear? Yes, sir. The line went dead. Carlson looked at Mitchell, who was still standing there, holding Rochelle's phone, his face the color of paper. Go get the chief, Carlson said quietly, and then start praying. Chief Harold Green had been enjoying a quiet evening at home when his phone rang. He was 56 years old, 3 years from retirement, and had run the Millbrook Police Department for the past 12 years without any major incidents. No scandals, no lawsuits, no federal investigations. That perfect record was about to end. Chief, you need to get down here right now, Carlson said, his voice shaking. We have a situation. 20 minutes later, Chief Green walked into the station and immediately knew this was bad. Really bad. Carlson looked like he'd seen a ghost. Mitchell was sitting at his desk, staring at nothing. And Sergeant Rodriguez was pacing back and forth, running his hands through his hair. Someone want to tell me what the hell is going on? Green demanded. They told him. All of it. The gas station, the credentials, the arrest, the phone call from the FBI. Green felt his retirement dreams evaporate in real time. You arrested an FBI agent, he said slowly, looking at Mitchell. You arrested a federal agent who was on her way to see her dying mother in the hospital. I didn't know, Mitchell started. She showed you her credentials, Green exploded. She told you who she was. What part of FBI special agent did you not understand? Chief, those credentials could have been fake, so you verify them. You make a phone call. You don't throw a federal agent in a cell and hope for the best. Green turned to Carlson. Where is she now? Still in holding. Get her out. Now. Right now. Carlson rushed to the holding cells. A minute later he returned with Rochelle. She was calm, composed, but her eyes were hard as diamonds. Chief Green had been a cop for 34 years. He dealt with angry citizens, violent criminals, and entitled politicians. But the look on Special Agent Rochelle Carter's face scared him more than all of them combined. Agent Carter, he began, his voice carefully controlled, on behalf of the Millbrook Police Department, I want to apologize for— Where are my keys? Rochelle interrupted. Your keys? My rental car keys, my phone, my weapon, my credentials. I want them back right now. Mitchell stepped forward with her belongings, but Green took them first. He handed everything to Rochelle personally. Agent Carter, I understand you're upset. Upset? Rochelle said, her voice dangerously quiet. Chief, I was handcuffed, thrown in a cell, and kept from my mother who is currently in the hospital fighting for her life. Upset doesn't even begin to cover what I'm feeling right now. I know, and we're going to make this right. Make it right? Rochelle laughed, but there was no humor in it. How are you going to make this right? Are you going to give me back the 45 minutes I lost? Are you going to explain to my mother why I wasn't there when she woke up? Are you going to undo the humiliation of being treated like a criminal in front of half this town? The room was silent. What I thought, Rochelle said. She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at Mitchell, who was still standing there, unable to meet her eyes. Officer Mitchell, she said, and he finally looked up. You saw a black woman in a nice car with out-of-state plates, and you assumed I was a criminal. You saw my federal credentials, and you assumed they were fake. You heard my story about my mother, and you assumed I was lying. Do you want to know what the common factor is in all those assumptions? Mitchell said nothing. It's not your training. It's not your experience. It's not your instincts as a cop. Rochelle took a step toward him. It's your bias, your prejudice. The part of you that looks at someone who looks like me and sees a threat instead of a person, a criminal instead of a colleague, a liar instead of a daughter rushing to her mother's bedside. I was just doing my job, Mitchell said weakly. No, Rochelle said firmly. You were abusing your power. There's a difference, and that difference just cost you your career. She looked at Chief Green. I'll be filing a formal complaint with the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Expect a call from FBI Internal Affairs and from my attorney. You'll be hearing from all of us. Agent Carter, please. Green tried one more time. I have to go see my mother now, Rochelle said, assuming she's still alive. No thanks to your department. She walked out the door, leaving behind a room full of officers who knew their lives had just changed forever. Rochelle made it to Millbrook Regional Hospital 8 minutes later. She parked haphazardly in the emergency lot, not caring about the lines, and ran through the automatic doors. Martha Carter, she said breathlessly to the nurse at the desk. My mother. Where is she? The nurse checked her computer. Room 304, third floor, but visiting hours. Rochelle was already moving, her FBI badge clipped to her belt where everyone could see it. No one stopped her. She found room 304 and pushed through the door. Her mother was in the bed, hooked up to monitors and IVs, but her eyes were open, alert, alive. Baby? Martha's voice was weak but filled with relief. Where have you been? I've been so worried. Rochelle crossed the room in 3 strides and took her mother's hand, careful of the IV line. Tears she'd been holding back for the past hour finally broke free. "I'm here, Mama. I'm here. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm so sorry." "What happened?" Martha asked, searching her daughter's face. "You look—" "It's a long story," Rochelle said, wiping her eyes. "I'll tell you later. Right now, how are you feeling?" They talked for a while, Rochelle holding her mother's hand, listening to the doctor's reports, making sure Martha was comfortable and getting the care she needed. The stroke had been mild, caught early. With therapy and medication, she'd make a full recovery. It was the best news Rochelle had heard all day. But as she sat there, watching her mother sleep an hour later, the events at the police station replayed in her mind. The humiliation, the anger, the injustice of it all. She pulled out her phone and called her partner. "Marcus," she said when he answered, "I need you to do something for me." "Anything." "What happened? I called the station. They said—" "I know. I was there. I'll explain everything later. Right now, I need you to contact the Civil Rights Division. File a formal complaint against Officer Jake Mitchell and the Millbrook Police Department. Wrongful detention, violation of federal authority, racial profiling. I want a full investigation." "Done," Marcus said without hesitation. "Rochelle, are you okay?" "No," she said honestly. "But I will be. And so will every other person of color who gets stopped by Officer Mitchell from now on, because he's not going to be a cop much longer." 3 weeks later, Officer Jake Mitchell was called into Chief Green's office. When he walked in, he found Green sitting behind his desk, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Beside him sat 2 people Mitchell had never seen before, a man and a woman in dark suits, both with FBI badges clipped to their belts. "Officer Mitchell," Green said heavily, "these are Special Agents Chen and Rodriguez from the FBI's Internal Affairs Division. They're here to discuss the incident involving Special Agent Carter." Mitchell's mouth went dry. For the next 2 hours, they questioned him about everything: his training, his procedures, his decision-making process that day. And when they were done, they had enough to recommend his termination. But it didn't end there. The Justice Department's Civil Rights Division opened a formal investigation into the Millbrook Police Department's practices. They found patterns of disproportionate stops of people of color, patterns of aggressive enforcement in predominantly black neighborhoods, patterns that had been overlooked for years. Officer Jake Mitchell was fired. Chief Green retired early, his legacy tarnished. The department underwent mandatory bias training and federal oversight. And Rochelle? She stayed in Millbrook for 6 weeks, helping her mother through recovery. And every time she drove through town, past that gas station, past that police department, she thought about how one moment of prejudice had cascaded into consequences that changed an entire system. 6 months after the incident, Rochelle received a letter. It was from a young black woman named Jasmine, who lived in Millbrook. She wrote about how she'd been stopped by police 3 times in 1 year for driving suspiciously, about how officers would follow her home from work, about how she'd felt powerless. But after the investigation, things changed. New officers were hired, new policies were put in place, and Jasmine hadn't been stopped once. "Thank you for standing up," the letter ended. "Thank you for not letting them get away with it. You changed this town." Rochelle folded the letter carefully and added it to a growing file in her home office, a file of thank you notes from people she'd never met, whose lives had been touched by her refusal to accept injustice. Because that's what it meant to be an agent, not just of the FBI, but of change. 1 year later, Rochelle was back in Millbrook visiting her mother, who'd made a full recovery. As she drove through town, she saw new faces on patrol, a diverse police force that actually reflected the community they served. She stopped at Miller's Gas and Go to fill up. As she stood at the pump, a police car pulled into the lot. For a split second, she tensed, old reflexes. But the officer who stepped out was a young black woman, maybe mid-20s. She walked over with a smile. "Agent Carter?" she asked. Rochelle nodded cautiously. "I just wanted to say thank you. I was hired as part of the new recruitment initiative after your case. I'm Officer Jenkins, and I promise you I'm going to be the kind of cop this town deserves." Rochelle smiled, genuinely this time. I believe you will be. As she drove away a few minutes later, Rochelle looked in her rearview mirror at the police car still parked at the gas station. Same place where it all started. But everything was different now. Justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about creating change, about standing up even when it costs you something, about refusing to accept that this is just how things are. Because sometimes one voice saying enough is all it takes to start a revolution. And Officer Jake Mitchell? He learned the hard way that a badge doesn't give you the right to judge people based on the color of their skin. It gives you the responsibility to protect all of them equally. If this story resonated with you, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced something like this? How did you handle it? Let's keep this conversation going because change starts with awareness. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.